as I was saying, Joy Taylor, every dog has its day. And since I'm a big dog, I've got 2 days. Okay. So now.
You just called yourself a dog?
Yeah, I'm a dog. Yeah, I'm a big dog, a big one.
Kevin Durant is 6'11", who can pull up from 40. Okay. This brother is on that level. I'm talking about offensively.
Do you think you're better than Darrelle Revis is right now?
I'm better than you.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Mark Brown. Welcome back to another episode of the Lowdown Podcast. I got a special guest on the show, and this is no ordinary guest. I've had him on multiple times in the past, and this is actually the first time I'm having him on with this new equipment I got back in February, because I interviewed him. Last time I interviewed him was after the Super Bowl, and here we are, mid-April, new equipment, new beginnings, and he is the legendary Jonathan Thomas, the sports reporter at KXAN-TV in Austin, Texas. Jonathan, welcome back. It's a three-peat for you. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 3P like the late 90s Bulls, right?
Exactly. And then speaking of that, hey, we're going to talk about this Last Dance, because I know you're an avid Michael Jordan fan. I mean, who isn't, right? Who isn't? Maybe somebody who's like pro LeBron that just can't stand Michael Jordan, but there's people that appreciate both players. But I know for a fact you appreciate both of them, and you definitely appreciate MJ. So how you feeling, man? How you feeling about this Last Dance about to start this Sunday?
Oh man, I'm really excited. It's something I've been waiting for a project like this for a really long time. I have the book, the famous book, The Jordan Rules, which was the first thing that really gave us an insight into the real character of Michael Jordan. Beyond the commercials, the Gatorade commercials, and the McDonald's commercials and all that stuff, the cartoons and the highlight videos. It was the first book that really documented the way Michael Jordan was, not just as a player, but as a person, and the way he interacted with his teammates. And, I bought that book when I was in high school, and, it's one of my all-time favorite books. It's I think, besides The Season on the Brink, which is about Indiana basketball, in 1987 with Bob Knight at the helm, I would say The Jordan Rules is right there as the best sports book of all time. And Friday Night Lights, of course, best sports books of all time. And The Jordan Rules is right there. So I'm really excited to see that, in video form. They had a video that came out after Jordan retired called Michael Jordan to the Max. Came out around 99, I believe. And it was a camera crew that followed Jordan throughout that final season, 97, 98, which is the season that The Last Dance documentary on ESPN is going to be focusing on with all 10 parts. But there was something similar to that came out back in the day. And it was released in IMAX theaters. It was a really big deal. Back when that technology wasn't really, available, that widescreen, stuff wasn't really readily available for everybody. They had theaters devoted to it, and they had it in IMAX theaters, Michael Jordan to the Max I'm talking about. And so I had that. I bought that tape on VHS as a kid and watched it all the time. And I thought that was really cool, but that just focused on Michael. That didn't focus on the entire team. Of course, I had no idea that a whole camera crew was following the entire team around that same year, which would eventually become this Last Dance documentary. So I'm really excited about it because, it was a little different. That Michael Jordan to the Max, like I said, was just strictly about Jordan. And it was a more sanitized look at that season, whereas this one is going to be a little bit more, how should I put it? It's not going to be as much. There's not going to be a filter on it. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a little bit more raw. You're going to really see a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's, uncomfortable, stuff that doesn't make Michael Jordan look as flattering. I mean, the quotes have kind of been made available from his interview with Robin Roberts, where he said a lot of people aren't going to think that I come off too well in this documentary. And I think, that's going to be really interesting to see because, if you've ever, like I said, I read The Jordan Rules. If you ever read The Jordan Rules, if you ever really looked at, looked up or listened to the way Jordan's teammates, guys that play with him, thought of him, you'd see that he's not just a smiling, Gatorade drinking, Space Jam, you know what I mean, acting, nice guy. He can be a pretty ruthless competitor, and he can be a pretty ruthless person.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of him being ruthless, is that this was on Bleacher Report. They tweeted it out today about, actually it might have been yesterday, about Michael Jordan saying that, hey, once they finish watching this, they're going to know that I wasn't really a nice guy. That's what they said about The Last Dance. I'm like, yep, here it goes. That's what I'm waiting to see this. And I'm also curious to hear what they're going to – because I already know they're going to go far in depth. There's 10 parts to this, so we already know they're going to go far in depth about every detail about how legendary these teams were whenever he was playing. And then especially the 72-win season they had back in 95 and 96, because I remember there was a lot of memes, because you know how, fast forward 20 years later when the Warriors, broke that record with 73 wins, went 73-9. And then they end up getting blowing the 3-1 lead. Everybody knows what happened to LeBron, and then rallied a 3-1 deficit, and then beating them in Game 7. So it's like, they made a joke out of that. They made a lot of memes saying Michael Jordan's like, they showed a picture of Michael Jordan, and Scottie Pippen laughing, memes about making fun of Steph Curry and stuff. So it's yeah. So I'm really curious about that 72-win season. Like, I want to know how the atmosphere was, how the players interacted. I just want to know what Phil Jackson was thinking. I just want to know everything, the ins and outs of that season, why it was so, important, because that's the first season that was the first season after Jordan retired, because he retired. He returned back in March 18th, 1995, so right before the playoffs started. Right. And then that was his first full season back. So it's like, that's something I want to hear about. I'm just curious about that, and I'm also curious about the first three-peat they had, because everybody knows about the 91 Bulls where they defeated Magic Johnson in 5 games and to get Jordan's first title. So it's I'm looking forward to hearing about that too, because everybody knows that they failed. You remember hearing about them failing to advance past the Pistons in 3 consecutive postseasons prior to the 91 season? Yeah, so it's
I mean, I'm a Pistons fan, so yeah,
so you were
I know all about that. I mean, well, I wasn't even born for some of those, but and then I was literally born and then a toddler for others, but yes. I mean, as a Pistons fan and going back and looking at the history, I've watched a bunch of those games, and I know how all that stuff went down, how all those series were decided. I think that's been one of the best rivalries in the history of the NBA for sure, Jordan versus the Bad Boys. So yeah, it really I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good, because there's been a lot of commotion about that, and obviously, on these sports talk shows right now, unfortunately, since there's not much to talk about right now, since sports is to a halt as of now.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of, commotion going on with, the Pistons and the Bulls. And then, just recently Shaq was talking about saying his Lakers would easily beat Michael Jordan's Bulls, like the 1996 Bulls. And then I remember Stephen A. was sounding off about that, saying that Shaq and Kobe said, he was saying no disrespect for them, but he thinks they would have got swept. Possibly, as he was saying that. I was like, whoa. Yeah, I was kind of surprised about that. I thought he was going to be a little bit more level. I mean, I thought he was going to be more neutral about that. I feel like that'll be a good series, honestly. And then just seeing them just having, I don't know, maybe he just did that just to
again, you got it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just would say this at that point. What Kobe are we getting? If we're literally getting Kobe in 1998, then yes, the Lakers would have been swept, because Kobe was a year out of high school. So yes, Kobe wasn't even starting regularly back then. So of course the Lakers would have been swept by the Bulls then. But if we're getting Kobe in 2003, might be a little different.
Yeah, he might have been. He might have been talking about the 2001 Kobe I can't remember. I have to because it didn't really say. I just saw a segment about it on the ESPN Twitter page. They were tweeting about that, and obviously the first take, how I just see the highlights of what they were talking about. So there's going to be a lot of hypothetical sports talk with them. Especially
right.
Yeah, and then obviously they were talking about Shaq. That list I told you about that was put out just last night, and it made a lot of noise today. As a matter of fact, where they were trying to compare, we were talking about that before we started recording, how ridiculous it is to even go far in depth. It's pretty funny, but at the same time, it's man, really, because there's really no way you can find an answer to that, because they're all from the past. Today, it says, I told you about it. It says all in their prime. Who wins this 5-on-5? And then for the Lakers starting 5, it has Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Shaq. And then for Chicago, it's Michael Jordan, Derrick Rose, Scottie Pippen, Artis Gilmore, and Dennis Rodman. So it's all it's going to do is going to be never ending. Like those comments are going to be, that thread is just never ending. There's people, everybody's going to be biased to their own like their own way, and then whether they're going for the Lakers or going for the Bulls, then there's somebody that are just trying to be reasonable about it or rational, and some people were actually breaking it down where they were trying to go player by player and how they would mess up against the other player. So it's like you look at, like, for example, like I told you, like it said Artis Gilmore was skyhooked the mess out of AD.
Right. Yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, it's funny seeing that, but like for this, I don't know, because like knowing that we're looking at this 10-part documentary, because Kobe is in it. I remember they showed the preview a few weeks back. They showed Kobe. Yeah, Kobe's going to be in it. There's going to be a bunch of legendary players. Today's players are going to be on there. Some of the best players of today.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why you get a chance to see the best of both worlds. And I'm not taking a shot at Hannah Montana or anything, but you're just looking at the best of both worlds between today's game and the past game, like merging together in this documentary. And that'll be pretty cool to see.
Well, real quick, the best of both worlds reference I would have used would have been the Jay-Z R. Kelly album that ended up never happening in the early 2000s. But no, man. I mean, I the thing about it is, what I'm, like I said, because I believe the documentary primarily focuses on that last season, 97, 98. I think that is where all the camera crews, I'm sure they're going to have background and whatnot and go through how that team got formed and the first 3 titles and then of course the previous 2 titles before 98. But I think the majority of the focus, and I mean, I could be wrong, I haven't seen it, but I know for a fact all the footage that we've seen from it is from that last season, 98, The Last Dance, because, that's what Phil Jackson called that season internally, The Last Dance, because he thought he was going to be leaving. He thought that several other players on that roster was going to be leaving. He truly felt like that was going to be the last time that group was going to be all together that year. He didn't know if Jordan was going to retire because Jordan hadn't determined that he was going to retire yet. But he felt like this is going to be the last time everyone in this organization is going to be together. So I think that's what the primary focus on. The primary focus of this documentary is on that final 97-98 season. The thing that's interesting to me about that season, to me, is the Bulls. They were probably, it was a year where they were very, very, I mean, they were great, obviously, but they were probably the least dominant of that final. It was the least dominant season they had of that final 3. Of those final 3 years, those final 3 titles that they won, because I remember they played the New Jersey Nets in the first round, and they barely beat the Nets. They swept them. Back then, the first round was 3 games. It was a best of 5, not a best of 7 like now. They barely beat the Nets. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I think they won the game 1 by like 2 points. Game 2 by like 3 points or 2 points. Well, like they barely won the first 2 games against the New Jersey Nets, 8 seed. And that was the Nets team that had Kerry Kittle, Steve Van Horn, Johnny Gill, that's hilarious. Not Johnny. What was it? What was the dude's name? Johnny something. All right. Anyway, no, I might have had it right. Johnny Gill, right? No, that's the dude from New Edition. Anyway. But yeah, Johnny something. Kendall Gill. There we go. Kendall Gill. Good God. I swear, Mark, it's like I was born in a different. I'm sitting here name dropping Johnny Gill from New Edition. Kendall Gill, the basketball player.
Yeah, it was
Kendall Gill is the basketball player, number 13, left-handed from Illinois. There we go. Anyway, but they had Kendall Gill. They had like a team that really doesn't stack up. Good team, but doesn't stack up to the Bulls, obviously. And they pushed the Bulls in that 3-game series. And of course, they played the Pacers in the conference finals. And Reggie Miller hit the famous 3-pointer where he clearly pushed off and hit the 3. I believe it was game 4 to tie the series up at 2. And he was jumping around, on the court, in jubilation at the Conseco Fieldhouse. So, that was a year where the Bulls really weren't dominant, and that's what is going to be interesting to see, the behind the scenes of that, where the Bulls how they handled that. How I mean, you're looking at it again. The Last Dance was the name that Phil Jackson that was kind of the theme that Phil Jackson gave for that team, and they're struggling. They're struggling, and then of course they played the Jazz, and that was a hard fought series. Bulls obviously won in 6 games, but just to see the behind the scenes of that, where they're going into a game 7 in the conference finals against the Pacers. I mean, shoot, if they lose that, it's over. I mean, they could have their run could have ended right then and there against the Pacers. So I'm just going to be really interested to see the behind the scenes conversations and just the way the team handled having their backs against the wall like that and not performing to the level that they probably thought they should be performing throughout that season and throughout the playoffs.
Exactly. And then another thing I wanted to touch on was when Jordan spent the 1994 season playing baseball, it was like the Birmingham Barons, and it was like, what were they, the Chicago White Sox?
Yeah, they're affiliated of the White Sox, yeah.
Right. So I wonder what they're going to say about that because, all we know is like, they try to make a joke about that on Space Jam, but, that movie's 24 years old, so it's like, they got it. I feel like they're going to get into all of that because if it's 10 parts, dang well they're going to be talking about just about everything that exists within this entire legacy that they left over the years. So and they're making jokes saying that remember I told you how Bleacher Report was saying that Jordan claimed that they're going to think he's not a nice guy after what they saw. So there was a joke I saw on Twitter about dudes are saying, oh, yeah, watch, it's going to show videos of Michael Jordan just slapping all his teammates in the face in the locker room. They're just making jokes about that. So, about him.
Hey, I mean, he did punch Steve Kerr in the face in practice, so it's happened.
Yeah, Steve Kerr did admit that.
He punched Steve Kerr in the face. He went at Will Perdue one time in practice. Will Perdue, who played on the first 3 championship teams, from 91 to 93, and he played a couple seasons before that. Michael Jordan wasn't really a big fan of Will Perdue at all. He thought he was soft. He gave him the nickname of Will Vanderbilt, and he said it was because he didn't deserve to be named after a Big Ten school. Jordan really treated him like crap, and one day in practice, I guess Will Perdue set a hard screen on Jordan. It was a little too hard for Jordan, so Jordan got up and took a swing at him and had to be separated and got kicked out of practice for it. And then of course he did the same to Steve Kerr a couple years later. So, Jordan was tough on his teammates. I mean, Bill Cartwright, who was on those first 3 teams, first 3 title teams, Jordan told teammates not to pass Bill Cartwright the ball later on in the game, late in the game. And Bill Cartwright approached him in the locker room and said, if I ever hear you tell guys not to pass the ball to me late in the game, you'll never play basketball again because I'm going to break both your legs. Ooh, so, I mean, Jordan was a tough dude. He was very hard on a lot of guys. There were a lot of guys who were on the Bulls who he ran out the league because of how tough he was on them. But I think the thing that Jordan had said in that quote when he was saying, a lot of people are going to think that I don't come across well in this documentary. He said, but he also said, I never asked anybody to do something that I wasn't willing to do. And I do think that's a good point. I don't think it justifies it, but I think that shows the drive, though, that Jordan had, the crazy drive that he had to be the best, where he was willing to do the tiniest things to be the best player. He was going to push himself, to the limit to be the best player. And he demanded that everybody else around him do the same. And if you didn't, you weren't going to last long. You weren't going to make it on that team, and there were guys that just couldn't keep up. And he felt like, look, if you can't keep up and, you fall by the wayside, oh, well, I'm going to win. I think that was just his attitude. I'm going to win whether you're here or not. I'll win with guys who are going to be willing to keep up with me. And, it wasn't pretty. It was very ugly sometimes, very ugly. You know what I mean? I mean, there was a guy named Brad Sellers. You go look him up. I mean, Jordan all but destroyed Brad Sellers when he was on the Bulls. He all but destroyed his psyche in his career, you know. Horace Grant openly talks about Horace Grant had a really tough time. Horace Grant also on the first 3 Bulls title teams. Horace Grant talks about it, you know, openly. He did an interview with Hot 97 a few years ago. It's well documented in the book that I was talking about earlier, The Jordan Rules. Horace Grant, you know, Jordan rode Horace Grant pretty hard too. And Horace Grant, though, Horace Grant had to stand up for himself. I mean, hell, you know, Horace Grant, though, one game in Philly during the playoffs against the Sixers, Horace Grant all but had a breakdown in the middle of the game and was crying and everything. That was more directed at Phil Jackson. But Jordan at one point had his hand out to basically tell him to calm down, and Horace Grant tried to grab his hand, and everybody kind of, you know, pushed him back. And Horace Grant would later tell his teammates that he was trying to break Jordan's hand. I mean, that's the kind of environment, and it was all set by Jordan, not by Phil Jackson. It was all set by Jordan. That's the kind of environment, that's the kind of pressure cooker that those guys were in, where it was like, we have to win. And I don't care about your Jordan's like, I don't care about your feelings. I don't care how much I hurt you. As long as we have more points than them at the end of the game, that's all I care about. I'm satisfied.
Yeah, see, that's a prime example, because they had somebody, like, I can't remember what analyst it was, they were talking about, because you remember 5.5, almost 6 years ago, this is back in August 2014, it was during training camp, well, this is before August 2014, it was like around when they were doing preseason, it was with the Chicago Bears, this is the NFL, and it was Martellus Bennett, as a matter of fact. You remember he was that tight end that used to play for the Bears? Martellus Bennett?
Yeah.
It was Martellus Bennett, and then they had a documentary about that, how he threw down one of the, I can't remember who it was, that he got in an altercation with somebody at practice, and then he just like grabs him by the neck and slams him, because Martellus Bennett's like 6'6", and he's big, slamming somebody, some DB that's 5'10", you know. Mm-hmm. And then he slams him down, and then Brandon Marshall, the linebacker, starts talking trash to him, and he's like, you want some of this too, Brandon? He's like, I'm a 6-time Pro Bowler. He's like, Brandon, 6-time Pro Bowler. He's like, 6-time Pro Bowlers can get knocked out too. That's what he said. Yeah, that's what he said. And then, so they were saying that Martellus was getting that dog mentality from Michael Jordan. That's what somebody was admitting.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of guys that tried. I mean, not to. I know we're talking about the Bulls and everything. I'm just going to make a quick pivot to this very quick, but that's what people would say about Kobe. That's kind of one of the things Kobe picked up from Jordan, because Kobe kind of had that same, way with his teammates as well. You know what I'm saying? But the difference, I would say the difference is, though, between, the thing is about Jordan is, Martellus Bennett is not considered the greatest tight end of all time. Michael Jordan, even before he won a title, there were conversations that Jordan might be the best player of all time. Now, not everybody agreed. A lot of people dogged Jordan before he won a title and said that he would never win a title because he was too selfish. I mean, that stuff was said about Jordan. I think because of the time we live in, we have a sanitized view of Jordan. Like, everybody thought Jordan was just so great and perfect. And there were people back then saying Jordan's not going to win a championship because it's all about him. Jordan's not going to win a championship because it's all about him. And people were saying that, it took Jordan 8 seasons to win a championship. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like Jordan won. Jordan wasn't Magic Johnson where he won his rookie year. You know what I mean? And, he didn't come out the box winning titles. It took him a long time. It took him getting beat by the Pistons. The Pistons used to dog Jordan out and say to the media and say to anyone who will listen, Bulls won't win unless Jordan passes the ball more. Bulls won't win unless Jordan passes the ball more. The difference between the Bulls and the difference between us is we're a team. We're an actual team. Jordan just cares about his stats. So Jordan was getting that rap, you know what I mean? But there were also a lot of people that, like I said, that considered him, even at that point, the best player of all time. So, when you're playing with someone like that, when you had a guy who was considered either the best or one of the best of all time, and they're not even into their 30s yet, that puts a lot of pressure on you if you're playing with them. So if you're playing with him. So, Jordan had a kind of before he even could open his mouth, it already was intimidating probably to be around him. Then when you play with him and he's super demanding, he's extremely demanding and you know, always pushing you, that makes it even more tough, even more difficult, you know, to keep up. And there are a lot of guys that, like I said earlier, you know, couldn't handle it. So, you know, not everybody can be like that, though. Not everybody can do that. You know what I mean? And the thing about Jordan, like I said, it's one thing when, okay, one of the good players on the team is yelling at you, but it's another thing when it's one of the greatest players in your sport is yelling at you. That way, that has a little bit more of an effect on you. And Jordan knew it did, too. Jordan knew it did. Jordan knew what he was doing. It wasn't like Jordan was yelling at these guys thinking, hey, I'm just your average guy. I'm just the average teammate. Want my teammates to get better. Nah, he was like, no, like, you're not going to mess this up for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to win. So pick it up. Let's go.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
you know, so that's the thing about that. And I just don't think that gets stressed enough. You know what I mean? Again, we had a very sanitized view of Jordan. And the thing about back then was Jordan was very careful about his image. You know, I mean, again, I mentioned earlier that Michael Jordan and the Max movie that came out that I had a copy of when I was a kid, you know, that followed in that final season. You know, there was never anything in there of him yelling at a teammate, him even being mad at a teammate, really. It was just very, you know, there were very normal interactions with him and his teammates, a lot of basketball. You know, he did his little interview with the crew there, and, you know, you hear the different, you know, portions of the interview throughout that particular documentary. You didn't really get an insight on how Jordan actually really was. It was very sanitized. It was a Michael Jordan production, and that was the way he wanted it. He was very image conscious. It took Jordan a really long time to be comfortable seen smoking a cigar. You know, we all know Jordan likes to smoke cigars now, but back then it was very like it was taboo to him. He didn't want people seeing that because his image was squeaky clean, perfect. You know, that's why he never really, you know, took any social stances, you know, any political stances. He was very, you know, he was the be like Mike guy. So he wanted, that's what he liked. And, you know, it took him a while to get more and more comfortable revealing his true self, although he never really fully revealed his true self. But that's the thing that's the most interesting about something like this, a project like this. You know, I mean, we all saw it in his Hall of Fame speech. You know, people laugh at his Hall of Fame speech because of how crazy he was sounding, you know, a lot. But that's really who Jordan is. That was the first time where you really got to see that's really the guy that when I watched that Hall of Fame speech, I was like, that's the guy I've been reading about in the Jordan rules and some of the other little things I've read over the years that gave an actual true insight into his character. He's insanely competitive. He can be very petty. He can be very arrogant. You know, like he's not just the Space Jam guy that I looked at when I was a little kid. Like, oh, Michael Jordan, he's so nice and he's so great. He's amazing at basketball. You know, like Michael Jordan's a tough SOB, man, and he can be an MF. You know what I mean? He can be somebody who you want to, you know, punch in the face, you know?
Yeah, so that shows you right there is that dog mentality that he had. I mean, he paved the way, like you said. He brought it up for Kobe Bryant and several players in the distant future after that. So it's like when you see the way Michael Jordan acted, and when you look at him now, it's like he seems so innocent now because he's so much older. He's 57 years old now, so he's pushing 60. This guy, I mean, even then,
right.
Like, he was on Good Morning America. He was on Good Morning America this morning. So, well, we're recording this on Thursday night. So this episode's going to drop tomorrow. Well, really Friday the 17th. So,
right.
Yeah, so
right.
He was on Good Morning
America. And that was the interview that I was referring to, the one on Good Morning America, where he was saying, "I'm not going to come off that great." You know,
exactly. But that's where Bleacher Report got it from.
Right, but the thing is, man, I mean, even you know, I mean, after he retired, there are all kinds of stories about Michael Jordan that emerged where you really saw like, okay, this is, you know, this guy isn't the squeaky clean guy. Like I think now he's seen less squeaky clean now than he was back then. I think a lot of people know now that Jordan likes to get, of course, people knew Jordan liked to gamble. Adults did, not kids, but adults knew Jordan liked to gamble. But Jordan likes to gamble. Jordan is not just competitive about basketball. There's a famous story, and people can look it up. Famous story that a writer, I believe it was a sports writer, but it might have just been a regular writer. I can't remember. Of Jordan basically stealing this dude's girl when this dude was out on a date with her, and Jordan basically snatched her up from the dude. And he knew the dude. He knew the dude was with that girl. Jordan could have had anybody else, but he wanted that girl, so he snatched her up. Mm-hmm. And it was a little dirty, But that's the kind of guy Jordan was. When Jordan wanted something, he got it. So, and that, I think with stuff like that out there floating around, Chameleonaire. I think a lot of people have seen Chameleonaire talk about Jordan being a jerk to him at an event.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I remember
where Michael Jordan refused to take a picture with him, even though Chameleonaire paid thousands of dollars for his jersey, and Jordan was taking pictures with other people who bought merchandise, like the other folks who paid money for stuff. Jordan was taking pictures with, but he wouldn't take a picture with Chameleonaire. And you can look that video up. Chameleonaire tells that story in a very hilarious way. Nori, the rapper, same thing. Jordan shut down Redman one time at another event and said, they were like, "Hey, Redman's right over there. Redman wants to meet you." And Jordan's exact quote, which I'll clean up for this podcast, was F-rap. Jordan's a jerk, man. Like, Jordan was a jerk. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's safe to say Jordan was a jerk. So, and a lot of people don't know that. But I think it's become more, I don't think it's as hidden as it used to be, because a lot of people know it and a lot of people don't know it. But you can find out. Whereas back in the day, Jordan had a team of people that Jordan, his image was so carefully crafted, you didn't really know about him. You didn't, Jordan, there's a 60 Minutes interview from Jordan's rookie year where he tells the reporter at the time, Leslie Stahl, did the interview. He tells her he doesn't drink, he doesn't like beer, he never liked the taste of it. And you see, after winning championships, you see him drinking a beer and, holding a cigar in his mouth. You know what I mean? But at that time, he didn't want it out there that he drank alcohol because he thought it would probably mess up his sponsorships. So he kept that to the vet. Jordan's first child, his oldest son, was born out of wedlock. Jordan begged reporters to not mention it. He begged the Bulls beat writers to not mention that he had a kid when he had a kid because they all knew that at that time he wasn't married to Juanita, his first wife. That's how much Jordan cared about his image. But now, now Jordan, I think, is finally somewhat comfortable with himself to where he can say, yeah, you know what, release that footage. Release the behind the scenes footage. Even if I don't look that good, release it. Yeah, sure. I'll get on when I do my Hall of Fame speech. I'll just speak from the heart and keep it real, keep it true to who I am. I'm a competitive, petty guy, and that's me. Whereas, back in the day, if Jordan went into the Hall of Fame in 2003, 2004, no way he would have gave that speech that he gave when he did go into the Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying? So, it's just been so interesting for me seeing the change and seeing how, as he's gotten older, he's gotten more comfortable with letting the public see him in his true self, his true self, and see his flaws. Whereas he was so careful about hiding his flaws.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Excuse me. Because whenever I think about that, see, I had a feeling, because when I was a kid, I pictured him the same way. I always viewed him as like a saint, somebody that was never never like did anything wrong, just seemed innocent, right? I just thought it was pure innocence. And as I got older and watched some documentaries, they had a documentary about him back in 2001, as a matter of fact. And it just seemed as time went on, and I heard stories from like the older generation, like my dad's generation, talking about how they said he's not who you think he is. And I didn't know what they meant. And as time went on, that's when I found out. And then, more things were revealed. And I'm glad that he's able to, actually be comfortable in his own image now. Because think about it, he's been retired for 17 years. He retired back in 2003. So it's like, now it's like, you might as well, man. You're pushing 60 years old. I mean, it won't do you any harm to let the world know, unless you did something like R. Kelly. Now, if you did something as bad as R. Kelly, that's a different story. But right. Yeah, but like when you really look at that, it just seems that. I mean, I could tell. I mean, think about it. If you're that much of a dominant force on the court, especially professionally, there's got to be some type of mentality you have that's where it could definitely give somebody some negativity here and there. So it's like,
no doubt.
Yeah, because like think about it, if you're that dominant, there's no way you're gonna be nice to everybody. Especially playing basketball, there is no way, man. Like the way players talk trash. I mean, you see it happen in football. You see basketball, especially they're face to face all the time. They're running back and down on the court. Especially playing defense. It's easy for somebody just to say something right in your face. Especially if you're playing man-to-man defense. Think about it. When you say you're on the wing, say like for example, like when Michael Jordan and Kobe were playing, when Kobe was a rookie. This was his second year. This is in '98, February of '98. Him and Michael Jordan were exchanging words left and right. And I can tell, like, by their body language, and I can tell by their tone. Like, you can't really hear what they're saying, obviously, but I can just tell by their body language and their facial expressions that, no, they weren't being nice to each other.
No, for sure. Exactly. And again, and all this is not to say that Michael Jordan's a bad dude at all, as far as, like Jordan's not, like a murderer or nothing. But he definitely isn't the squeaky clean dude that, as a child, we were all led to believe he was, you know what I'm saying? And you're right. I mean, that's, you don't get to be that dominant without having that insane drive about everything. And it's not always going to be pretty. It's not. That was the thing that separated him from his peers. I mean, Charles Barkley, another great player. The thing about Charles Barkley was Charles Barkley didn't have the drive that Jordan had. Not saying Charles Barkley didn't have drive at all, because he definitely did. Of course, you don't get to be a Hall of Fame basketball player without some drive, right? Especially the size that Barkley was at, being 6'4" and being big, playing the power forward position back then, going against guys routinely who were 3, 4, 5. Sometimes 6 inches taller than him, you know what I'm saying? And to be able to dominate the paint the way that Charles Barkley did back then and get the rebounds Barkley did, obviously you have to be driven. But he didn't have, there were certain things he wasn't willing to do. You know what I mean? Like Jason Williams, who's spelled with a Y, not the regular Jason, not white chocolate Jason Williams, who unfortunately spent some time in jail for accidentally killing his limo driver. That Jason Williams was a teammate with Charles Barkley in Philly, and he talked about how Barkley sometimes would just not do anything in practice. He'd be sitting on the exercise bike. He used to piss off his teammates sometimes because Barkley would be yelling at everybody else to do stuff, yelling at people to run the floor, while he's sitting there on an exercise bike eating an Egg McMuffin. That wasn't happening with Jordan. Jordan was out there in the mix. Jordan was doing the same things on the court that the 12th man was doing. He was out there pushing himself every day. Jordan used to fight. I mean, there's, the famous story of Jordan's, the coach before Phil Jackson, Doug Collins. Jordan walked out of practice because he thought Doug Collins was trying to screw his team over during a practice scrimmage on the score. He thought Doug Collins wasn't keeping the score on purpose to make sure that it was going to be tougher for Jordan's team to win, and he just walked out of practice. Jordan insisted on whoever was on his team in practice. If they're going 5-on-5 in practice, his team's going to win every single time. Like, he insisted on it. He made sure he made them win, like, in practice. You know what I mean? It was like this throughout his entire career. After Title I, after Title II, after Title III, after Title IV, after Title V. he was still bringing that every single day. So he was just different. You know what I mean? Not every, some guys, as great as they are, they put their foot off the gas a little bit. They get on cruise control just for a little bit, even if it's for just a tiny bit, But as accomplished as Jordan was, he never did that. He treated every practice and every game like it was his last. Like he had to win it and he had to perform at the highest level possible.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing, because what you said is, see, that makes me now looking at that makes me want to watch this right now. I wish it was premiering tonight or tomorrow night, man. We have to wait till Sunday, man. Like, the more we talk about this, makes me want to just see it right now. But I know we've been talking for a while, so you got any last minute thoughts you wanted to provide about this Last Dance documentary? We already know it's going to be legendary.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad ESPN listened to the internet and listened to everybody on the Twitterverse and dropped this earlier than they were supposed to, because it was supposed to come out in June around the time of the NBA Finals, but obviously during the current situation, we're not going to get an NBA Finals, definitely not in June at least. And so I'm glad that they moved up the release of this documentary. I'm really excited to watch it. I geek out over this stuff. Anyone that just listened to this podcast knows how much of a geek I am about this kind of stuff. So, I'm just excited, man. I'm excited to see all the behind the scenes stuff. And, a lot of the stuff, I don't know if I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily learn a lot. I hope I do. I certainly hope I do. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily learn a lot just because of all the stuff I've read and watched over the years, but it'll be fun to watch it play out in front of your face. You know what I mean? Even if you know what's coming, it's always nice to see. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm really thrilled about, is to be able to watch, like I said, just the little things, how they interacted, and beyond Jordan, man. I mean, beyond Jordan, I want to see, what it was like for, Tony Kukoc, what it was like for Steve Kerr, what it was like for, Ron Harper. You know what I mean? I mean, Ron Harper, was a great player. You know what I mean? In his own right, when he played with Cleveland. Got hurt. I believe when he was with the Clippers, he got hurt his knee, and he never was the same player after that. Meanwhile, but before, Ron Harper was a high flyer, acrobatic kind of guy. And he had to humble himself and take a reduced role, and then he landed with the Bulls, in the late 90s. I want to see what he has to say about that time. So,
and I was also my bad to cut you off. But,
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering do you know if John Starks is going to be on there? Because I know John Starks played pretty well against Michael Jordan.
Yeah, he did. I'm sure I don't know if he's going to be in there, but I'm sure. I'm sure they'll cover it. Well, I think they'll cover it. I don't know. I mean, that in '98 they never played the Knicks in the playoffs. At least they didn't play the Knicks, so I don't know exactly how in depth they'll go into their series with the Knicks before that, because the Bulls did play the Knicks. That was probably, I'd say, their next, after the Pistons, after they got through with the Pistons, probably their next rivals, I would say, would be the Knicks. In '92, the Knicks took them to 7 games in '92. '93, the Bulls beat the Knicks in 6 games. '94, the Knicks beat the Bulls without Jordan. '96, the Bulls beat the Knicks in the second round. There was a lot of games with John Starks involved. I don't know how in depth they're going to go into that particular matchup, but I think there's a whole lot. It's 10 parts, so there's a whole lot of stuff they can cover, and I'm just interested to see exactly how they break it down. Do they, do they focus on the last season, each part of the documentary, or do they take a break? I know part 1 is definitely going to have a whole lot of background and history leading up to that season. I know that for a fact, but I wonder, just as it goes, are they going to be, how much are they going to actually be flashing back? I think that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, especially like with Reggie Miller too. That's another one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. Well, again, that series, man. That season, that conference finals with the Pacers. I mean, that was a good one. And that the for a long time, and it still might be the case. People may have to look this up. But in Game 7 of the '98 conference finals, I think was the highest rated non-NBA finals game in the history of the NBA as far as television ratings. It was the most watched non-finals game because, again, everybody thought that this could be the last game we see Michael Jordan play, because people didn't know. Jordan never said he was going to retire, but there was a feeling that he might retire. So everybody thought Game 7 was going to be the last game that the Bulls play. And, so the whole, a whole lot of people around the country watched that. That was a hell of a series between the Bulls and the Pacers with a lot of cool moments. So for sure. And Reggie Miller, man, I mean, Michael Jordan once got ejected. This was in '93 though, but Michael Jordan got ejected for taking a shot at Reggie Miller. Him and Reggie Miller got into a fight, but people can look that up on YouTube. He got ejected. So Reggie Miller brought out the dog in Jordan too sometimes.
Yeah, he really did. But I just wanted to say this, man. I mean, we can go on all night about this, but expect this to be a phenomenal piece because it's like we said, it's a 10-part documentary, and we are all looking forward to this. I'm glad, like you said, they moved it up to now instead of later, and man, I just can't wait to see it. And again, Jonathan, I mean, I've had you on. This is the third time I've had you on this show, man. Like, expect to be on here a bunch because it's a lot of fun every time I have you on. It's always something big. So, yeah. Again, I really appreciate you being back on again.
No, man. Thanks for having me. I had a good time. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to watching this thing on Sunday. But yeah, man, thanks. I hope I sound good on this new equipment. And sorry about my Johnny Gill error earlier. It was Kendall Gill once again. Kendall Gill of the Flying Illini, not Johnny Gill of New Edition, who replaced Bobby. Do you know who Johnny Gill replaced? I might have gave it away a little bit, but you know who Johnny Gill replaced? Yeah, Bobby Brown. Yeah, I gave it away a little bit. Yeah, well, Johnny Gill replaced Bobby Brown in New Edition. Right. Yes, he did go solo, and so that was the guy who they picked to fill in for Bobby or to replace Bobby Brown was Johnny Gill. Yep.
I guess my, right?
Right, exactly. There you go. There it is.